Welcome to another edition of AFL Today, Week 16 in review. I'm your host, E-Money, and we got a big show, so we're going to break it down quickly here for you folks. Big surprise for the week. Again, Tim Markham sticking it to me. Not only did Tampa Bay start 0-5, and I predict them not to make the playoffs, but they get a home playoff game. Can you believe that? Talk about turnarounds. Got to hand it off to Coach Markham. Also, the LA Avengers with the home game. Can you believe that? The way these guys were playing 2 months ago, I would have never picked that in the cards, but they've turned it around. Congratulations. And last but not least, coming up next week, you got Chicago battling KC, and a perfect scheduling scenario here. The winner of that game gets the bye week, so those guys are fighting for it. But who would have thought KC, 3 wins last year, fighting for the bye week this year? Got to hand it off to those guys. All right, big week. Let's get into it. All right, folks, let's get right into it. Game number 1 on the docket. Georgia Force take a trip to Orlando and, of course, come up victorious once again. Georgia, I think, giving us a foreshadowing of what's going to happen in the playoffs. We'll talk about that next week with our playoff preview. Got to hand off to Chris Greisen again, setting the record, 111 TDs. We'll talk about this in the Ironman section, but again, it's more important. These guys are on the winning program. They have the bye week, and you couldn't ask for anything more from Greisen. All right, next game on the docket. Let's talk about Columbus taking Philadelphia and tripped Philadelphia, and this was it. Must-win situation. The Soul come up barely, 56-53. Columbus still has a pretty good chance to get in the playoffs, but nonetheless, I think the Soul saying, hey, this is a statement game for us, and we're getting in for sure, and they solidify themselves with a playoff berth. Now I think the pressure's off a little bit for Philadelphia. They're in the playoffs. That was in question for a little bit. Now they can relax, regroup, make sure Grazi's 100%, and then start their playoff run. All right, next game. Let's move on. Tampa Bay, we talked about earlier in the show, proving it right here. Home playoff game takes on hapless Grand Rapids 69-40. And we'll talk about next week in my playoff preview. I'm still not sold on the Tampa Bay Storm, but nonetheless, they get the job done and earn the playoff home game. All right, next game on the docket. Nashville Cats still keeping their hopes alive. Although with a loss here against KC, it's going to be pretty tough. They go down 63-66. KC, as we talked about, earlier in the show now, here they are looking at a bye week from just the horrible season last year, so got to hand it off to those guys. And they proved it. This was a game they technically really didn't have to win, but they did. Made a statement. The Cats came up short. And we'll see if the Cats have anything left to make to squeak in the playoffs. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. All right, next game on the docket. The Dragons, New York Dragons, take a trip to Dallas and get blown out of the water. This looked more like their Week 1 performance. Even if the Dragons do happen to squeak in the playoffs somehow, we'll discuss that coming up. I don't think they're going anywhere, especially by this performance. So this is another disappointing season for AG. And we'll talk about next week, again, our playoff predictions. But you're going to hear it right here. I don't think the Dragons are going anywhere. Dallas, again, keeps rolling, and I think these guys are going to be rolling next week, too, just to make sure they're fresh and they don't have a letdown in the playoffs. All right, next game on the docket. Hapless Arizona takes a trip to San Jose. And San Jose, again, they have nothing to play for and still dominate. And, again, got to hand it off to San Jose. Just more of the same. And I think LA pretty much destroyed Arizona last year with that heartbreaking loss in Arizona. They really have nothing left to play for. We'll see if they even field the team next week. All right, next game on the docket. Austin, and a feisty game here. This is, again, for these guys pretty much playing for next year. Austin goes down to New Orleans. New Orleans still does not have a chance to make the playoffs, but nonetheless put in a great performance. I guess they want to get next year on a good foot, and putting up 66 points certainly helps that. All right, next game on the docket. Las Vegas to LA. I was at that game, and it started off typical LA Avenger style fashion. LA kind of suits itself. When it's playing a poor team, it plays poor. When it plays a good team, it plays well. And it was that way in the first quarter. But then, again, come second quarter, the last, again, they came to play here. They show up the last minute, stopping a first and goal, stopping them cold at the goal line, and then turn around scoring with 11 seconds left, put them up that extra bit, and then capitalize as soon as they got the ball back. And it was over from there. I got to hand it to LA, earning the home playoff game, and that's going to be on ESPN2 Monday night. Maybe you might see me there as well. All right, moving on. Monday night showdown here, pretty much playing for playoff seedings here, but I got to hand it to you. It was billed as the Scipio-Harrell show, and Scipio pretty much got the better of this one, just like last time when they played. But I will tell you this, the most magnificent catch, even though they lost, has to go to Damian Harrell. He had this one hand behind the back impossible. He must have had glue on his hand, and they just need to feed the ball more to Harrell. But I will tell you what's interesting about Colorado. These guys started off poorly in the beginning of the year, then they made a rise, and now they're playing poor again, so they're hoping they can make the rise for the playoffs and get an Arena Bowl run. But that wraps up the games. Now let's get on to the All Money Team Players of the Week. All right, folks, let's get into the All Money Team Players of the Week. Let's start off on the offensive side of the ball. Hey, he broke the record. You got to hand it to him. Chris Greisen of Georgia, racking up, 111 TDs. This guy's a stud. And again, the record isn't really that important. I think the big record is the win column. And he's doing exactly what they brought him into Georgia to do. And who knows? I think we're probably going to be looking at a Dallas, Georgia conference championship, and it's going to be a slugfest. So looking forward to that one. On the Ironman side of the ball, of course, my favorite, I've already crowned the Ironman of the Year, but I got to give this one this week to Dewan Alfonso. This guy is everywhere. What a stud, I got to tell you. TDs, TD runs, TD catches, interceptions for TD returns. He is everywhere, all over the field. Got to hand it off to that guy again. I'd say he's my runner-up for Ironman of the Year. Okay, let's move on to the defense side of the ball. Jermaine Jones. This guy was a stud for Dallas and pretty much swept New York out of the building there. 2 TDs, interceptions for returns there. Got to hand it off to him. Big game there. So that's the All Money Team All Money Team Players of the Week. Now let's move on quickly to the playoff scenarios. All right, folks, let's make it fast. Let's make it quick. Playoff picture here. We only have 4 teams left, so let's talk about it. Everyone we talked as last week is already in. Of course, Philadelphia locked themselves in. LA locked themselves in. Now there's only 4 teams left. Let's talk about the National Conference first. We have a showdown here, which is perfect because these games, it appears, they scheduled these knowing this in advance. Columbus plays New York. The winner of that game pretty much is in. If Columbus wins, they are in, and that's all really they have to do to it. Now let's talk about Columbus. Still has a chance to get in if they lose, but again, it's pretty complicated, so I'm not going to waste your time with it. But again, Columbus owns their own destiny. They win, they're in. If they lose, there's still a few things that might happen with a New Orleans loss or whatever, but nonetheless, they need to win to get in. All right, on the other side of the conference here, Utah versus Los Angeles. Now, Los Angeles is already in, but Utah needs to win, and they're in. If they lose, they hope that the Cats lose. So if Utah loses and the Cats win, the Cats are in, folks. So that's the exciting thing we're playing for. I'm going to be interesting to see what LA kind of team they field, how they want to do it. Maybe they want to knock off Utah right here because they prefer to play Dan Alexander and the Cats. But I think I'd rather play the Blaze, so because of the lack of defense. But we'll see what interesting things happen. So those 4 teams, last playoff spots. Again, folks, join us next week as we have the playoff preview. We're going to break down Week 17, of course, and then give you the playoff preview for Arena Football in the 21st season. All right, folks, stay tuned for next week. God bless, everybody.